Hey everyone, welcome back to Auto Anatomy. I'm Sean. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, today we're back on the Corvair project. So where I left you in the last video was we got in the car to kind of spit and sputter and run really bad for a bit and found out we're missing a couple of parts on the car. So those are on order and hopefully should be here in a few days. In the meantime, I also ordered another gas tank and sending unit because I've got a really good feeling that the one that's in there right now is junk. When we picked up the starter for the car, I also picked up a set of wheels for it because the wheels that were on it were some old school 15x7 Corvair star wires, which are really cool, but I've only got 3 of them. And unfortunately, finding one of those is gonna be almost impossible. So today we're going to toss in the new gas tank, the sending unit, blow through the entire fuel system, put wheels and tires on it, change out the differential oil, and hopefully by that time we can get the carbs put back together, put some fuel in it, crank it up, and maybe take it for a test drive. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the bell to be notified when any new videos come out. It's an absolutely free way to support our channel and really helps me to know that you kind of like the stuff that we're doing here. If you're interested, we also have some cool Auto Anatomy merch, and I'll put a link above. In the meantime, let's get started. All right, so we're working on getting the transmission fluid changed. I'm really thinking this is a flood car because that is what came out of the transmission. And it's rusty and it just smells like old water, this kind of stagnant smell. So it's almost done draining. I'm going to put a cord in it, spin the rear end over, like turn the wheels back and forth, see if I can just slosh a few things loose. I also sprayed a can of brake cleaner through there to see if we can break up a bunch of stuff. But we'll put the plug back in, fill it back up with some fluid, and see what happens. All right, so we got the new wheels on, and I think they look really, really good. They're definitely smaller than what was on there, but what was on there was way too big for the car. And now I think it's time to move on to looking at the fuel tank. As I said in the last video, I'm really suspicious of any car that has been sitting for a long time that may have had fuel in it, and I've been burned way too many times. I mean, if you remember on one of the Thunderbird videos, we had to do the same thing where I put some fuel in it because it looked good and then ended up being just absolutely full of junk and ended up replacing the tank and blowing out the fuel line. So I went ahead and purchased a new fuel tank just in case. But before doing that, I'd love to throw a bore scope down in there and just take a quick look and see what's down in the tank. So I've got my little $20 Amazon bore scope here. And let's take a look and see what we can see down in the tank. It's coming down through. Already starting to see some garbage down in there. And yeah, there's junk down in there. So I'm pretty certain that the fuel tank is just full. Let's pull this tank out, put the new one in, and see what we can find in the old one. Jacking the car up, it's such a shame. You can see this was a fairly new tank. It's definitely been replaced as it's nice and shiny, but looking down through the filler neck, it just looks like it's full of old rotten gas. So I think it's worth just going ahead and changing it out anyway. So I'm guessing to pull it out, you've got to drop the sway bar, then it just looks like, a couple of bolts, little J hooks, one on each side. And this thing should drop down. All right, well that was harder than I expected. And yeah, you can see the sway bar bushings are just shot. So that's definitely on the list of things to do. Looking at the rest of the bushings, I mean, looks like this whole front end could just use a complete refurb. I mean, all the rubber bushings are just toast. But now we've got access to the fuel tank. It looks like we've just got, you know, a couple of hose clamps here, and then a J-bolt here, a J-bolt here, and then somewhere way up there is the hose clamp for the filler neck. After about an hour of fighting with the fuel tank, I got it out, and what's the first thing I notice? Look at that. It looked all shiny and pretty from the outside, but it's got a big gigantic hole in it. And look down in there. Oh, that's disgusting. Good thing I've got a brand new one in the back seat. Let's get this one out, toss the new one in. Well, I got the tank out, and I ended up actually making a huge mess. So had to scrub the garage floor before my wife gets home. But coming around and looking at the tank itself, it's more than just got bad gas in it in one little tiny hole. You can see it's cracked all the way up through here and like right through here. So this thing was absolutely garbage. And I'm pretty much convinced this is a flood car. Just everything about it keeps coming back to there being a ton of water up in the car. I mean, gas tanks shouldn't rust like that unless they've been sitting in water for a long time. And then everything on the suspension and down in the frunk is like full of mud. So that would also explain why we've got all this, you know, dirt and mud and caked up stuff in the seats. I'm betting right there where you can see those lines, I'm betting that was pretty much the water line, although there's some up there too. You know, with most cars that are a flood, you've got to worry about like electronics and things like that, and thankfully on this thing there's really not any. So I'm hopeful that the gauges work, and you know, if not, that I can just clean them out, or you know, I can find some replacement ones. But it does at least give me a little bit of an understanding about the car now, and that gives me an idea. I think you guys need to name the car. So in the comments below, put what you think we should name this project car. I think it needs to do something with water or flood or something like that. So let me know what you think. Well, the new tank finally showed up and looks great, and it's actually, I think, the exact same piece that was in there, because it has that same sticker on the new tank as it did the old one. So let's put the new tank in, put some new fuel hose in. I've already got the new sending unit in it, and then we can just start blowing out the fuel line. We'll be one step closer to getting this thing finally up and running. I was really hoping that the funk wouldn't extend down in here, but you know, it does look like it stops after about 2 inches. So I think I'm just gonna wire brush all this out and, you know, make sure it's nice and clean so we don't put any more crap down in the brand new tank. So it's about a week later, and the parts for the carburetor that I'd ordered from Clark's Corvair finally came in. Super excited to go ahead and pop them in so we can see if this car runs. And I went to go and just make sure all the needle settings were right and everything was perfect, so that when we went to go fire it up, that it was going to work. And I noticed something about the idle air needle. It just didn't feel quite right, and so I took it apart, and what I found was the tip of it was broken off, which meant, you know, unfortunately, it is down in there. So I tried everything that I could, heating the body up, boiling it, you know, doing all those things, tapping it out very gently, and it just would not come. So I reached out to my buddy Mike Callahan, where I got the wheels and the starter for the Corvair, and he said, you know, I've got a rebuilder for you, just come on out and see me. So I just came back from picking up this, which is a complete, you know, stock carburetor. So let's bust this thing down, fire up the ultrasonic cleaner, get it all cleaned out, put all of the new, you know, gaskets and seals in this thing, and then finally we're gonna see if this thing actually will run. fun with fuel filter screens. So the carburetor's rebuilt. I put it back on the car. I think I've got pretty much everything buttoned up. I don't know. Let's try it and see if it spins. Okay, keys on. Ooh, that's encouraging. Oh, it's close. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Man, it really wants to run. Man, it so wants to run. All right, let me just check the timing real quick and make sure it's right. I mean, this thing has probably been jacked all up, so who knows what the timing is set at. So it sounds like it wants to run, but it's almost like as soon as I let off the starter button that it's dying, that the ignition power is getting cut out. The only thing that I've done here recently is I had the voltage regulator unhooked because when I tried to spin it over earlier, it was smoking. And I wonder if I need to like connect some wires here to make sure it's gonna continue to run, because that's the only thing that I've done differently. Let me do a little research and see what I can figure out with that.
A few moments later.
Now I really feel like an idiot because I spent about the last half an hour going through all my wiring, making sure everything was right, you know, looking at wiring diagrams. Yeah, I didn't have the key on, and that kind of makes a difference. So let's try this again now with the ignition turned on. All right, so it runs really, really bad, and it's blowing oil everywhere out of the dipstick. It sounds like it's only running about half the cylinders, but it runs, and that's the most important thing. You know, the rest of the stuff I can work on. As long as it runs and the engine itself actually doesn't sound like it makes any noise. I think the oil bubbling out of the dipstick is because I've got some sticky rings from just sitting for so long. You know, honestly, just getting it hot and letting those rings unstick will probably fix that, because the engine's only got like 80,000 miles on it. So it's really not that worn. I think the next step is gonna be, you know, going through, verifying the ignition timing, making sure the carburetor's set right. But I'm encouraged. So now that it runs, let's see if we can make it run a little bit better. All right, so one of the things I noticed, bugs. One of the things that kind of struck me as odd is that the car only would like spit and sputter and kind of run if it had like, you know, 30 degrees of initial timing. And didn't really know why, but I decided, you know, let's just go ahead and go back to the manual and put everything back to base settings. Like I pulled the carburetors off, measured, you know, how far open the butterflies should be, put everything back to original, put the timing at like 12 to 16, which is what factory is, and put the carbs and everything back on. So let's see what happens. Okay, so it ran. Not great, but initially it actually sounded pretty decent. The noise that you're hearing is actually from the alternator. The bearings are shot there, so don't worry about that part. But I'm excited it ran. It still sounds like it's running rough, and don't really know why, and it shut off. So let me just make sure it's got enough fuel pressure and, you know, do some of those normal things. But it runs, so that's really exciting. Okay, I've got to admit, I'm kind of at my wit's end here. I have, you know, gone through the carburetors probably 4 or 5 more times, set everything to factory specs, made them perfect as I can get them. I am confident that the carburetors are right. I checked and bought a new coil. That wasn't it. I thought maybe, you know, it was running for a few seconds and then it would die, and that maybe the coil is getting overheated and it's not able to rise in time to fire the next cylinder, and that's why it's dying. Put a new coil on it, that wasn't it. I've checked the valve flash, I checked for bent push rods, I've checked for, you know, as much as I can find, and absolutely nothing has made any difference whatsoever. So in talking to Dad, he said, you know, have you changed the condenser out in the distributor? And I didn't. You know, I put new points in it, but I didn't put a new condenser in. So I just finished putting new condenser in. I've got no idea if it's going to make any difference at all. But at this point, I'm willing to try anything, and you know, it's only $5, so let's put it back together and give this a shot. All right, here goes nothing. And the oil pressure light went out. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how happy that makes me. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how happy that makes me. I have been banging my head against this car for, oh my gosh, now like a week and a half straight, and it's finally running, and it sounds good. There's a little bit of an exhaust leak, which, you know, I'll get some gaskets and take care of that. But I'm really excited that it sounds like it's running on all the cylinders. It sounds smooth. It had good throttle response. Oh my gosh, I am so much happier now. So next up on the project, we've got to address that alternator noise. That thing is moaning like crazy. So we'll get a new alternator or bearings or something. I'll have to figure out something to do with that. And then I've got some new brakes. So I've got all new master cylinder, you know, hoses, wheel cylinders, all that stuff. Go completely through the brake system, and Lord willing, maybe go for a first drive. Thank you so much for watching. Listen, if you like the kind of stuff that we're doing, hit that subscribe button and click on the bell to be notified when new videos come out. Thank you again. God bless. We'll see you next time.